talk to about your arrangements.
Bring Henry back! Bronstein's a hat!
You know, other people in the Chronicle, lots of people in the Chronicle are marched in anti-war demonstrations all through the fall. 3 of them, at least that I know of, have written about doing so.
About how many people you think you're expecting?
Bronstein's a hack! Bring Henry
I mean, to me, it'd probably make the Chronicle more credible if readers know that some of the staff participated in anti-war demonstrations, because so many people in San Francisco did. It shows they're part of the same world that everybody else is part of.
I have a lot of sympathies for your cause. It's just that, you know, for tonight, I'm more concerned about 149 people being comfortable. Right.
Bring Henry back! Bronstein's a hack! 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 Bring Henry back!
You know, I listened to and have talked to some of the journalistic pundits from various institutes and universities and so on. And, you know, there are lots of different things you could say about journalistic neutrality and the responsibilities of journalists and so on. But I'm amazed at you know, all these discussions. Nobody ever mentions that there are laws that give workers rights in this country and that limit the rights of the employers. And that, you know, that's something that you know, the journalists, those of you who've been in the journalism business may know that journalists like to think there's some exalted caste of people who have some special status in the world because they're the fourth estate or something. And you know, there's certain elements of truth. Journalism is important, but lots of occupations are important. And ultimately, journalists are just workers, just employees working in most cases for profit-making capitalist enterprises, and the people who employ them are just bosses. And we've got the same rights that other people do by law. As Ted pointed out, you know, there's no exception in the law. The legislature, the California Labor Code section that covers my case has an interesting history. It goes back to 1937. At that time, some people may know, there was a movement in California, actually a large and vibrant movement led by the novelist Upton Sinclair. It was called EPIC, which stands for End Poverty in California. Unfortunately, it wasn't entirely successful. Here we are 65, 66 years later, and we've got a whole lot of poverty still to fight in California. But that movement was growing, and apparently a lot of employers decided to retaliate against employees who were supporting that movement by firing people. In the 1936 elections, progressive Democrats carried the election, and a new legislature came in, and one of the first things they did was write that statute to protect workers who were siding with the Upton Sinclair movement. And apparently the law, it's not very well known. Most lawyers don't even know about it. Even some labor lawyers don't know about it. I found out about it, frankly, because a guy who's a private investigator in Los Angeles sent me email and said, hey, check this out. You know, none of the several lawyers that I talked to before knew about it. So one of the things I hope to do with my case, whatever, I don't know what's going to come of it, but one of the things I hope to accomplish is to give that law more publicity. Because other people, other journalists need to know they have that kind of protection, and other workers who are not in journalism need to know that by law they have that kind of protection. I know at least one person who was fired for protesting the war, who's already filed a complaint under that law, and I hope we can spread the word and let everybody know that they are protected. Just the other day, you know, again, I feel, depending on masses of supporters here, somebody else sent me email saying, you know, there's actually a San Francisco ordinance too. And she pointed me in the right direction. I looked it up. It's part of something called the San Francisco Police Code. And that too says employers can't do anything to limit the associations and activities outside of work of their employees. It, you know, says unless it makes it impossible for them to perform their duties, which is certainly not the case in my situation.
It's about the status of workers legally in the United States. Before the Revolutionary War, we were under English law. And English law governed workers according to a doctrine called the law of master and servant. The law of master and servant was the same thing that governed relations between man and wife, between parent and child, between servant and master before the American Revolution. And actually that law, that doctrine continued to be in existence until about the 1840s. And you had a situation in the United States that they call relative freedom, which means you're free off the job, but you're not free on the job. And until the 1840s, employers were allowed to beat their employees legally. Well, as a result of the union movement and a lot of other struggles, the status of workers improved in the United States, but it's still a situation of relative freedom. And now, this case is not an isolated case, and it's not just about journalists. There's people all over San Francisco who were afraid to go to demonstrations because they thought their employer might see them on television. And there were also people who got fired who did go to demonstrations. And there's a lot of people, and you know them, I'm sure, who are afraid to speak out even off the job. And of course, speaking out on the job is not even considered. So we don't really have freedom in the United States because we're more and more spheres of life are controlled by large corporations. And so basically we're going backwards. Yes. And what this is all about is going forward again. This is all about not having relative freedom, but having total freedom. And there needs to be a Bill of Rights that governs the workplace. And that applies not just to government, but that applies to corporations. So that's what I wanted to say.
The other thing, this is about free press. Increasingly, people who want to change the world and try and keep this a decent place for our kids, we're forced to take direct action because we have less and less breathing space in this society, less and less space to have a conversation about what's wrong and how to change it. And one of the main places in the past we've had to have that conversation, and when we are able to have that conversation, people tend to agree that maybe we shouldn't send our kids to war for oil. But we less and less have access to that town hall